Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today we have a very interesting and jam-packed session driving into how Michigan Medicine was able to cut down operating costs and processing time using robotic process automation. My name is Dana Carlin, Marketing Executive here at Pyramid Solutions, and of course, your lovely host for today. So we'll start with a quick introductions of our covering speakers, and then we'll cover basics of RPA, including what it is, what processes are great candidates, and how it works. Then we'll move into challenges Michigan Medicine faced when trying to optimize with Epic systems and how they chose RPA as their tool of choice, and walk through three specific processes: professional billing, hospital billing, and anesthesia coding. Our first speaker is Chris Stewart. He is a senior project manager with Michigan Medicine's revenue cycle and has been working with them for the past 5 years. His experience expands over a variety of projects, including software implementations, Epic feature implementations, process improvement, and much, much more. If Chris isn't ensuring successful projects, you can find him actually sipping on a nice glass of scotch and trying to figure out how to become the best harmonica player in the world. Our next speaker is Eric Moore. He's the RPA practice leader for here at Pyramid Solutions and has over 11 years of experience with process automation and helping organizations leverage intelligent automation technology to obtain their desired outcomes. Eric is a Navy veteran who likes to take the lead and believes his success is only the shared success of his team. And to help wind down from work, he is an avid engineer who loves to build video games in his spare time. So, who is Michigan Medicine? For those who do not recognize the maize and blue colors, Michigan Medicine is based in Ann Arbor, Michigan, and is part of one of the world's leading universities. They are a premier, highly ranked academic medical center and award-winning healthcare system with state-of-the-art facilities. Their vision is to create the future of healthcare through scientific discovery, innovations in education, and the most effective and compassionate care possible. Michigan Medicine includes hospitals and health centers, the Medical School and its faculty group practice, one of the nation's largest biomedical research communities, and education programs that train thousands of future healthcare professionals and scientists each year. A little bit about Pyramid. So Pyramid Solutions is based in the suburbs of Detroit and Bingham Farms, Michigan. We are an intelligent automation solutions provider that strives to optimize the way our clients work with information from the time it enters an organization to the way it's analyzed to making insightful data-driven decisions. For over 30 years, we've been working with some of the largest organizations to build solutions that utilize the latest in RPA, intelligent content capture, workflow automation, decision management, analytics, and content management. So with that, I'm going to give it over to you, Eric.
All right, thanks, Dana. So what is RPA? Robotic Process Automation. Don't let the term robotic mislead you, though. They aren't actual robots. These are software robots that are super easy to make with a little training, of course, and they can do pretty much whatever you can do at your computer. Of course, even though it's easy to make a bot, it isn't going to make sense to automate everything you do. But imagine how much more productive you could be when you farm out all the boring, high volume work to your bot. Or let it do things like swivel chair work. You know what I mean? Where you consolidate info in a couple of different applications, usually for like no apparent reason whatsoever. Let the bots do that kind of work. There's no reason a person should have to do it. Not when it's so easy for you to just whip up a bot to do it. And I mean, that's what they're designed for. In fact, that's where the real power of RPA is. You know the stuff in your job you can automate, and you can be empowered to automate it with RPA. So there's no need to wait around for IT to get involved. In a conversation as short as today's, it's kind of hard to describe RPA and really do it justice. If I tell you it's like a macro recorder, that's really an oversimplification. And if I tell you it can make smart decisions and perform logic, that kind of makes it seem more difficult than it is. It lies somewhere in between with kind of like a nice drag and drop interface. You want to find an image on a page, drag in a command to do that. You want to download all your email attachments, drag in a command to do that. You want to capture an image and then extract all the text from it? No problem. There's OCR built in. In fact, there's like 500 plus commands built in. So it's probably got everything you could possibly want to automate your job. All right, so when do you use it? Well, these are kind of the sweet spots for RPA. Repetitive tasks. Anything you find yourself doing over and over again, just let a bot do it. High volume. Any process that's high volume is going to be great for RPA. Now, of course, we love it when we can automate an entire process from end to end, but with high enough volume, you can usually get some pretty good ROI just from automating a portion of that. Manual data entry. One of the benefits of RPA bots, they don't make mistakes. How many times have you accidentally transposed some digits, or you just went into Excel and copied the wrong cell? It happens, right? So let the bots do that work. Especially if you're talking about, maybe getting smacked with some non-compliance fees, or anytime you make mistakes, definitely let a bot handle that. Multiple legacy systems. One of the benefits of RPA is that you don't need an API to make your legacy systems talk to each other. Because a bot mimics what a person does, it's really a non-intrusive and cheap way to make all your applications play nicely together. There's no need to code anything special to sit in between the apps, like no middleware layer. There's no need to change the app's underlying code. You just have the bot do exactly what you would do. Like click around in the user interface, copy, paste, press some keyboard keys, that kind of stuff. Although that's really like simplifying what they can do, they're capable of so much more than that. Lastly, something I didn't really mention here, they're great for when you have a really tight SLA. Because these bots are extremely versatile, not just in how they work, but also in how they get kicked off. Even that part of it mimics a human. So you can really work these things 24/7 for fast SLA turnarounds. All right, Michigan Medicine's need for RPA. So Pyramid Solutions got the chance to work with Michigan Medicine on 3 different RPA bots. And I had the opportunity to work personally with Chris and his team on this, which was an awesome experience. Chris, I'll pull you on a second. I don't think I've ever worked with someone who was as prepared for anything as you were. You're like an Eagle Scout. So anytime a challenge would pop up, you had a plan for how to deal with it. You were awesome.
Yeah, I think we were just really motivated to make this work.
So that being said, this project wasn't completely without its challenges. We definitely experienced that. We started up initially at the same time as all the COVID stuff started impacting everybody, especially hospitals. And in fact, I remember you guys had started planning for an emergency COVID treatment location setup just like minutes after we started this engagement. So I think it's probably fair to say that COVID didn't drive your RPA initiative. It had to have been in the works already. So maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. Like what led Michigan Medicine to look into RPA?
So yeah, you're right. COVID wasn't the original impetus for this. Michigan Medicine isn't unique in that there's been kind of a longer term trend to find ways to improve efficiency and reduce costs. In the area that I come from, revenue cycle, which is all those back-end processes of billing and registration and the stuff that supports the enterprise, we've constantly had to figure out how we can handle an ever-increasing volume and ever-increasing administrative burden from payers while maintaining really the same level or even less number of people that do the work so that we can improve that efficiency. And while Epic and other applications have a lot of functionality within them that allows you to automate and make things more efficient, there comes a point where an individual application by itself simply can't handle the automation of tasks that you otherwise are having humans do that are those high volume repetitive rote tasks. And so that's when we started looking into RPA. We did a proof of concept about a year prior. And then when we started looking at purchasing software, in this case, Automation Anywhere, we purchased that around January of last year. And then we started, I think, actually working with you, Eric, at the end of June, right? After COVID kind of put a halt on things.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really just been about trying to improve our efficiency and do more with either the same amount or even a lesser amount, especially after COVID. So yeah.
Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of organizations. They need to do more with less. And I don't know, do you have any solid numbers? Do you have like growth rate numbers for what you guys were actually trying to achieve?
I think for Michigan Medicine as a whole, I think we average somewhere around a 5% growth per year, whereas our FTE or full-time equivalent, the number of full-time employees equivalent that we have, has basically stayed flat for I think longer than I've been there. And I've been there now since 2016. So again, pretty regular increases in the actual scope and the expansion of Michigan Medicine. And we've partnered with other areas in the state, with Michigan and Metro Health, and just trying to keep the administrative costs at a flat line. That's really where the the struggle and the opportunity is.
Yeah, 5% is pretty significant too. And that seems to be really common. I hear that from everybody. Oh yeah, we had to increase 10% greater output, and nobody ever says they got 50% more employees. Seems to be the commonality there. All right, next slide. So as I said, I know that this project had its challenges, and kind of right out of the gate, we got together for day one and then kind of clicked pause. And in there, we had some things going on in the background that you were able to take care of. Maybe you could just kind of talk about some of these challenges, because these are not uncommon either, especially in the hospital system, dealing with a Citrix environment and the security that you guys have. What kind of security challenges did you guys see?
Yeah, I think the general theme is trying to figure out how to handle the unique situation of RPA, where you have a piece of software, but it needs to be able to interact and have access like an actual human does. And that's, as with a lot of places for us, that was a very new thing. And as one would expect and hope, as a healthcare system, we had pretty stringent security and access protocols in place. So we had to work very closely with our identity and access management group and other people within our Epic team and in our auditing team to figure out how exactly we would get accounts for the bots to use and how we would name them so that they were easily identifiable for auditing purposes, and how we would control and track their access. As again, these are getting access like a human would in a human's case for pretty much any access within Epic, even read-only access. You generally need to take established courses and have these courses, recorded within our system. And of course, a piece of software isn't going to take, introduction to hospital billing for a week. It's just going to get access and do it. And so you really have to work with those teams to get everyone on the same page to make sure that we feel comfortable that we have proper controls in place and structures for auditing. And then past security, similarly with the infrastructure, again, you have pieces of software. In our case, to help with scalability, we weren't sticking this on, a workstation or a laptop and locking it in a closet. We were setting up virtual machines, which in our case, we're getting set up very similar to our servers were, and they're on server 2019 machines. But at the same time, we needed them to function and have applications and access like a normal user's workstation would, like the biller or the coder that they're trying to mimic the job of. So one good example in our case was we wanted to get Office on these computers. We don't have a normal process in place for installing and especially maintaining an Office installation on a server machine, because why would you install Microsoft Word or Excel on a server? And so we actually had to work with our application team to come up with a pilot system for handling the notification and deployment of updates to Office so that we could have it installed on the system. The actual installation is still a hand install, but at least we had something in place to handle the longer term updates so that we didn't end up with security vulnerabilities, which again, being a health system, any business, that's a pretty paramount piece. But we were able to work through that as well. And then the last piece, which isn't necessarily relevant to everyone, but certainly most people using Epic, and there are many other applications that use Citrix. Epic is a Citrix hosted application, at least in most cases, as it is for us, and because that basically means you're effectively interacting with an image that gets displayed on the screen. When you're going to do your automations, the Automation Anywhere software can't quote unquote see the UI elements like the buttons and the fields as it would normally with interacting directly with an application. When we did our proof of concept prior to working with you guys, we had to go through a very difficult process of getting completely separate hand installs of Epic that didn't use Citrix. Luckily, Automation Anywhere, and I believe the other major vendors for the software have come up with things such as this remote agent for Automation Anywhere that basically then feeds that information around separately so that the bot can then basically overlay it on top of the Citrix image it has. However, while it is much easier than dealing with the hand installs, especially on a long-term basis, it did require us to set up separate Citrix servers. We didn't want to install this remote agent on the 140 or 150 production Citrix servers we have.
Right.
And so we set up our own 3 separate Citrix servers, for our 2 different levels of non-production and then our production environment, so that we could keep it isolated and we could maintain it better.
And maybe we should talk about that a little bit too. I think we'll cover it on the next slide here, but you kind of touched on how this normally works. I didn't mention this, but this is not like the screen scraper of yesterday. These things are way more advanced, these RPA bots. They're able to look at controls on a page and come up with a whole list of properties based on, the DOMX path, the path, all sorts of properties of the button. What is the text inside of the button? And so we're able to typically build bots that are extremely resilient, and they're able to work with an application no matter how it changes. That being said, you mentioned this remote agent for Citrix. It sits on top of the Citrix machine, and it lets us kind of inspect those elements on the page. But that definitely created its own challenges, because those reliable properties that we have, we didn't necessarily have those, right? Those disappeared. So instead, we had to do some workarounds. And I don't know, would you mind kind of telling people what we use for workarounds most of the time?
Yeah, I don't know exactly what percentage it was that we couldn't object clone, but there was a good amount that we could, but there was also a good amount where, while you could actually find the object, the path by itself wasn't something reliably you could pick, and there wasn't any, uniquely defining characteristics that would make you want to choose the object. Luckily, Epic has a lot of shortcuts that are available, which are very rarely changed, if ever. And so we were able to, in many cases, simply utilize shortcuts for various screens. Opening up like the hospital transaction inquiry to open up a HAR or an account, or to find the search bar, or any number of other places where we were able to use such shortcuts. And then, in addition to shortcuts, we were also able to use image recognition, which, like you said, these days is far, far more advanced than very basic, location-based screen scraping, where you can actually select a section of the screen within that application that you'll give it as a parameter to search within, and then have it find that individual object. Obviously, if they change the look of the UI, that can change things. But if it moves it around, it is able to find it even though it's moved around on the screen. For example, if somehow the preference for where the tabs show up within a hospital account get moved back and forth, it will be able to find those. And now, one of the things that you helped us learn, Eric, was when selecting that window, you can select a smaller window, which both gives you a quicker image recognition, but even more important, it also helps you to really kind of cut down to only the areas where that button is likely to be if there is some kind of change, like where the buttons move. For example, when you're in that account, it has those tabs lined up horizontally in a very specific area of the screen, and so that you can tell it, only that area to look in, both to make it quicker, to the point where it's basically about as fast as doing the object cloning, and it helps ensure the reliability by only giving it that area to look at.
Yeah, and it's not slow like it used to be.
No,
I mean, these things go pretty quickly, don't they?
Yep. Yeah, and especially when we're able to, select, specific areas. Obviously, you don't want to cut it down too much, but there's, again, that kind of realm of possibility where that button or object might show up. It is impressively quick. And then I know one of the other areas that we had issues with that we had to overcome was in dealing with the work queues, just some finickiness as far as, when it would refresh or it would automatically resort, stuff within the work queue. But we were able to, again, get around that largely with shortcuts, some of which we wouldn't have been able to object clone anyways, because the buttons that the shortcuts are for don't even exist. Yeah, I'd say that, any place we could have used, we were able to use shortcuts, we did. And luckily, Epic especially has a lot of shortcuts.
Yeah, and it makes it fun to watch, just because everything goes so quickly.
Yeah, and shortcuts by far are the fastest. Shortcuts are, the image recognition is quick, the object cloning is usually quick, but the shortcuts are very, very fast. I'm a fast typer, but the bot's a lot faster.
Yes, solid point. So with that being said, I think I'll turn this over to you and let you take it from here. Maybe you could just dive into telling people about the systems that we automated or the processes.
Sure.
Okay.
As mentioned before by Dana, we had 3 areas within revenue cycle where we chose to do our first automations. One was in hospital billing or facility billing, and this is where we are generating and printing primary EOBs to get mailed with secondary paper claims. The next was a professional billing process where we are resolving missing referring provider claim edits out of a professional claim edit work queue, specifically for EKG claims. And finally, for anesthesia coding, we have a bot that is performing batch creation and basic data transcription from our anesthesia system Centricity to the anesthesia batch entry function within Epic. So for the hospital billing process, as it was prior to the automation, we had a staff member who was designated to handle this and some other processes. She would handle the mailing of all the secondary paper claims that come out of Epic. So the person who handles the claims reconciliation and therefore the claims printing would get this stack of paper claims and hand it to this person. That person would then go into Epic, open up the hospital account, and use the demand claim functionality on the primary bucket to generate a synthetic primary EOB, which would then print to her printer for her to match up with that claim and print it out. Very simple process, but it does take a little bit of time to do the generation and open up each account. And we were getting 100, 120 of these a day. So it definitely was able to save some time and be some low-hanging fruit. Now, obviously, you see here it talks about printing it, enveloping it, and mailing it out. The bot obviously can't envelope it or mail it out, as Eric said. It is not an actual robot. It is just a piece of software. So this is an example of us being able to automate a large chunk of this bot, but not the entire thing. And here, as I said, relatively simple process, but we have a pretty good volume here. So we were actually saving approximately 45 hours a month on this bot. So again, because it's not an actual physical thing, there's no stack of claims that could get handed to this bot for it to actually know what to go in and generate the EOBs for. So instead, we had created an automatically generated CSV file out of our clearinghouse that gets transferred into a shared folder. The bot itself then reads that file, which contains all of the secondary paper claims that were printed that day. And then it will go into Epic and open up the account for each, do the demand claim, wait for the demand claim to be generated, and then it will print it to that person's printer for them. Once it has gone through everyone in this file, it will then send an email to that person as well as their manager saying we were successful, here's how many we had, here's how many we printed, here's how many we couldn't print. Every once in a while it can't print one either because of a timing issue with claims acceptance or because the account is somehow closed. and it will list which one of those it was not able to print, so that the person could go in themselves and do it. Then, of course, the person then will take that stack and line them up with the claims and print and mail them out. For professional billing, again, we were working a professional claim edit out of a claim edit work queue. The staff would go into their work queue, which was based on the bill area. We had a number of different ones for our professional billers. They would then open up the patient's chart, go to the cardiology tab within that chart, look for the EKG associated with that charge, and then they were looking for the authorizing provider listed there, and they would then enter that in the referring provider field back into the claim edit and resolve the claim edit so that the claim could go out the next day. In a lot of cases, that EKG was listed with a do not use dummy provider. And in that case, the human would then go into the actual narrative chart note, usually in this case, the ED note, to find the actual referring provider written within the text. And that is what they would enter. Now, with the bot, similarly, we have the bot using work queues. However, we created a separate work queue dedicated to this bot for this specific process, and then set up the work queue rules so that it would get just this edit for just EKGs. The bot then would work everything out of this work queue, similar to how it worked the CSV file for the HP bot. It would then go into the chart, just like the person would. It would look at the cardiology tab. It would do a filter down to the corresponding data service and look for the EKG that lines up with that charge. Similarly, it will extract the authorizing provider listed and enter that in and resolve the claim edit back in the work queue. Also similar to the human, if it is that dummy do not use physician, it will kick back out, but instead of doing what the human does, which is go into the chart and read through the ED note or other narrative to try to find the referring provider, at this point, because that was a lot more complex and we wanted to really make sure we were getting the right name in there, we instead have the bot transfer this back to the work queue that was used by the billers, and we have it identifying the proper bill area so that it sends it to the correct billers based on that bill area for them to resolve themselves. And as mentioned here, a couple other scenarios that it doesn't handle itself is if there's multiple EKGs on that invoice. In which case the bot's not sure exactly which one to look for, and again, just to be safe, we make sure that we have a human work those. So the bot's really only working the very clean, obvious cases where it can just grab that authorizing provider. At the end of this, it will then send an email out to the manager of that team and indicate, here's all that we could work, here's all the ones that we couldn't work that went to this work queue for these bill areas or that work queue for those bill areas, etc. So that he has a complete accounting of what the bot did and didn't work, and what his staff need to work from their work queue. Again, very simple process with working in the chart, and we did have some interesting things there as far as identifying exact fields and pulling the data out, but it's fairly high volume for us, and it did save a decent amount of time. And then for the third bot that we chose for our initial 3 for our go live, again, was related to anesthesia coding, where we were doing that batch charge entry in Epic. And this is another good example where we have a bot carving out a specific section within the overall process. The coder, of course, is a professional coder and trained, and their job really is to do the actual anesthesia ASA coding and the diagnosis coding by reading the chart and using their knowledge and expertise. However, a lot of the time that they're spending is actually not related to that, and it's really just transcribing very basic data from centricity into the batch entry screen within Epic. And again, we could potentially set up an interface there, but it's quite complex. As Eric mentioned, interfaces aren't always the easiest thing to get working appropriately. And so we wanted to use a bot to try to cut out that piece where they're just basically transcribing that data. So here, we actually chose to have the team themselves export the CSVs from the Centricity web-based reporting. It's not particularly difficult to do the exporting, and they wanted to really control exactly when the bot was processing a given data service so they could keep things aligned in order for the remainder of their process and reconciling the different concurrency errors within them. Originally, we were going to have the bot pull them out of the website, which would have worked well, but this was the method that would work best for the overall process. So once that team generates the CSVs for a given data service, which are by the location, they will then drop all these into a shared folder, which the bot looks for. It will create a batch for each of these files, and then enter all the data for each session within that batch. And this is stuff like the patient's name, the place of service, whether it was inpatient or outpatient, selecting the correct insurance, the anesthesia type, the start and stop times, the different anesthesiologists with their start and stop times. And here in this case, there are certain fields that are hard stops for good reasons, such as that anesthesia type or the start stop times, and making sure that all the time is used up between the different anesthesiologists. And if some of that data is missing, which can happen at the centricity level, we have the bot set up to recognize that and default these values to dummy values. And then within the email that it will send at the end of each batch file, in addition to stating which batch it is and for which data service and how many sessions it entered, it will also detail out explicitly each of the exceptions where it chose to default something or otherwise something was missing, so that when those anesthesia coders go to do their actual job, which is doing the coding for those sessions, they also know that they need to fill in that information as well.
And that's something we didn't really touch on earlier, but exception handling. I don't want people to get discouraged thinking they can't automate a process just because there are exceptions. You mentioned it in all three of those processes. We had exceptions and we were able to deal with them. So
Yep.
As long as they're controlled, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, I think the difficulty, and of course it's not related to Epic or healthcare in any way, is making sure that you define those exceptions, which I think is a very important piece of this. But absolutely, as long as it's still a rule-based thing, you absolutely can build that into the bot and have it say, if this screen pops up, or if this data field is missing, or if this date, the end date, is actually before the start date, have the bot do this, have it send an email, have it record down all these issues to hand to the person, so that again, you're having the bot deal with that mundane task of entering all this data in, but if something's wrong, it can appropriately identify and pull in the human being where it's actually necessary.
Right.
Yeah, and I think between that and the ability to carve out potentially portions and not even an entire process where the ROI still exists, it really opens up a lot of opportunity for RPA to come into otherwise complex processes with a decent amount of nuance, as long as that nuance can be based on rules.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's really interesting, guys. I appreciate the breakdown. That was very thorough, and I'm still shocked at how many hours you guys are able to save by doing this with the same technology. I mean, if I can save almost 150 hours a month with my team, the possibilities are almost endless. So I am shocked at what you guys are able to do with such a short amount of time. But moving forward, though, I know we talked a lot about what we did. We want to know how we can help you guys. You know, you heard what Michigan Medicine did, and Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, did we come in at the proof of concept with you guys?
No, we actually did a proof of concept with another vendor, with actually also another RPA software. You guys came in with our actual live implementation with Automation Anywhere.
Okay. And how was that experience for you?
I think it was great. You know, as Eric very nicely pointed out, we were quite prepared. I think we really wanted to make sure that this worked, despite everything going on with COVID. And we had some people on, the people that we had picked to be on this team to do this development, were very interested in it and very capable people. But I really don't know how we would have been successful if we hadn't had Eric or somebody like him there to really help us get started and help us teach kind of those basics as far as best practices and the types of things to look for and what order to really do things as far as troubleshooting. I think we would have eventually gotten these bots created, but it would have taken a lot longer. They probably wouldn't have been nearly as resilient, and we wouldn't have learned those best practices for us to continue on our own. I think it was really very, very helpful to get off the ground.
Oh, I'm glad to
I
hear.
will say from From a flip side though, Chris, you're not a software engineer, right?
I'm not.
Yeah. So you picked up on this stuff very quickly. And it was only with what, like 1 or 2 sessions of just showing you guys the shortcuts that you were really off and running. And I think, a lot of times when we hit snags, you and I were on the same wavelength. So I think that's a pretty good testament to how easy it is to pick up on all this.
Yep.
I mean, you're a smart guy too. I'm not gonna discount
Thanks.
that, but
Yeah,
that
I
was
think it's
definitely
yeah, I
made
think
for
it's
the average.
definitely a. Sorry, I keep cutting you off. Go there.
Oh, sorry, just lag time here. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely made for the average user, I would say. I don't know if you would agree with that or not.
Yeah, I don't think you need to have someone that has experience with Java or C# or .NET or something like that to do kind of regular RPA bot development. I certainly don't have any of that experience, but I'd say probably you want people that are technically minded. But yeah, you definitely don't need some dedicated programmer to be able to be a successful bot developer.
Yeah, that's kind of my phrase too. I'll tell people technically minded,
Right.
that mindset. If you don't know where File Explorer is, that might be a little bit more challenging. But
Yeah.
I could work with everybody else.
No, that's great. But if you guys do need, for the people that are on the call, to the exactly what Chris is saying is that, if you're at the very beginning stages of just trying to envision what your strategy is and where you need to go, and even understand or prioritize what processes are best to automate, that's something we can help you out with. Or on the other hand, if you guys are already down that path and finding some snags and you just can't get those bots developed, we're more than welcome to help you out there as well. So a big question that a lot of our clients always ask us, and everyone should, is, what makes Pyramid Solutions so different? And for us, it's a very, very simple question to answer. And of course, you can see is, it's our RPA difference, the way that we approach each project. So first and foremost, we're more than just an RPA implementer. We provide intelligent automation solutions, meaning that we have expertise and experience. The big one is the experience in a wide variety of automation technologies, as you can see here, from content capture, like I explained before, all the way down to cloud services. So in doing so and having our teams being so available and or understanding of the different technologies, we're actually able to help you guys come up with a bigger picture of your IT infrastructure and not just go in and throw a piece of technology at a small problem, but really understand how it's going to work to help you guys achieve your company objectives. In addition to that, a key thing is we partner with our clients, meaning that if our clients aren't successful, we're not successful. Like you can see with what we did here with Chris, is that we wanted to make sure everything that we did worked for him. It got the objectives that he was looking for. It's helped save time and cost. And that to us, what makes us happy and makes us keep moving on. And the third point is we are one of the very, very few partners out there. If I'm not mistaken, Eric, there's maybe 2, 3 training partners that are available. We are one of those that are specialized in Automation Anywhere RPA tools and help Fortune 100 companies all around the United States get their bots up and running. So what's your next move? So if you guys are interested in learning more, like I said, if you're just trying to get bots off the ground, understand what your strategy is, or need some help in disaster recovery, contact us. I mean, you can connect us in a variety of different ways. You can hit us up on our website. You can contact myself directly at marketing@pyramidsolutions.com or send us a quick message on LinkedIn. So with that, I would like to conclude today's session and appreciate everybody's time. I'll let you guys have the rest of the day back. Have a good one, guys.